coming to a Christian and you're asking, okay, if you believe in a God, then tell me why. No, I'm a Christian. So when you come to me and ask why, I'm just going to tell you who.
Hello and welcome to Beyond Damascus, the show where encounter meets mission. Friends, I'm your host for today's show, Aaron Richards. You probably know that by now if you're not tuning in for the first time. If you are, welcome. We're happy to have you. I'd like to jump out of the gate and thank our friends at St. Gabriel Radio for being a sponsor of this show. And also, much of our beautiful studio is here on account of them. Friends, Beyond Damascus, the show where encounter meets mission. Why do we call ourselves Beyond Damascus? Well, we look back to the story of St. Paul, who on the road to Damascus encountered Jesus in a way that changed his life forever. He came one man, and through meeting the Lord Jesus, he left a different man. He left, went back to the city of Damascus, where he was trained up in how to move from that moment of initial encounter to a place of mission that transformed the face of the church. So that's what we believe you are capable of doing. That God desires to be in relationship with you, and through that relationship, he desires to transform the face of the church. And today we've got a special show.
Yeah.
Brad, how are you, man?
Good seeing you, man. I'm doing well.
Got to
Doing
start
well.
with the high five.
Yeah, that's right.
My brother in arms, Mr. Brad Perrin, is here with me today. Dan is gone through no choice of our own.
Yeah, right.
Dan's had the last couple weeks.
He's
We need to intercede for the patron saint of cars.
yeah.
Had some difficult transportation
Yeah,
issues,
he's the man.
but
We'll try to make up for his.
we're gonna make up for it today. So the angle that we were hoping to go, kind of it's part and parcel kind of this season. So Brad, this season at Damascus, you're launching into probably one of the busiest seasons of your mission year. And for those who may not know and who might be tuning in for the first time, so
Yeah.
I work here as one of our executive directors, and you work as our director for our missionary program.
That's right.
Give me a snapshot for those who might be tuning in or haven't heard it before. What's the missionary program?
Yep.
What's that mean for you?
Yeah, that's good. Well, the missionary program at Damascus is what allows us to really fulfill the mission that we feel we've been called to, which is serving the youth of the church. So usually when I'm conversing with people and they're like, okay, the missionary program at Damascus, tell me a little bit about it. I'm like, well, we're a community of young adults who serve the youth of the church. And that community of young adults has grown over time. Like when we first started here at Damascus, we were running Catholic Youth Summer Camp, which we had run for years. And then the Lord named Damascus. And all of a sudden we were asking ourselves, like, what is Damascus in addition to the summer camp that we run? And the young adults who were serving at the summer camp had served faithfully for years before. And all of a sudden the Lord started kind of tapping us with what could it look like for us to start a missionary program that's not just during the summer, but all year. So long story short, our missionary program has two different facets to it. We have our summer missionary program and our full-time missionary program. Our summer missionary program this coming summer will have 300 young adults who serve in 3 different locations here in Ohio, in Northwoods. It's actually in Wisconsin, but it serves Minnesota and Wisconsin, and then in Michigan. And that's awesome. And then what happens from there is after the summer concludes, we have a certain number of those missionaries who stay with us to serve through the full-time year here in Ohio. And this coming year, that'll be about 65. So, give or take like about 20% of our summer missionaries stay for full-time. And then we have a 2-year program where they learn the art of evangelization, the art of community, the art of prayer, the art of holiness, and they are deployed into the world. So that's what we do.
I think we've hinted at and told your story in the past of kind of being one of the trailblazers who responded to the call to our missionary program before it was even a program.
Yeah, that's right.
I don't know. I'd love to hear it from your perspective again.
Yeah, thanks.
So back in 2016, when we were starting here at Damascus, we had sort of flirted with the idea of embracing and understanding and defining this missionary identity within the context of summer camp, but had no clue what the Lord had in store. Remind me of what's your process?
What does it look like? Well, I think in all honesty, I think I first have to honor you and Dan and Amber and Monica alongside you guys as our missionary identity started way before we had a missionary program, which is actually the coolest story about Damascus, right? Is that there was this adventure that God was calling a select number of people in the central Ohio area to. And now that adventure's been spread to who knows how many hundreds. And yeah, it was actually November of 2015 here in Ohio. We broke ground on site, and you guys welcomed me into that. I remember I was serving as an undergraduate missionary with St. Paul's Outreach, and I had this heart for high school and college. And I was like, how can I live in a way that serves both? And you and Dan had just been like, you know what, come and just see the groundbreaking here, and let's talk through just what this place will look like. And over those next number of months, we stayed in communication, and you guys welcomed me as they were building things on site to come and see. And my heart was just, I don't even know the word for it. My heart was, it came alive because you guys presented a blank slate and that God wanted to do something. And every time, like, I think back to my conversion, what I think about is like almost immediately, I wanted to build something. And I had no idea what I wanted to build. You know, I don't know if Noah woke up one day and wanted to build something before the Lord asked him to build the ark, but like, I just felt called in my life to do something that built. And lo and behold, I felt drawn to that blank slate. I said yes. It was actually me and Ben Huber, who oversees our programming here. He was in Iowa. We said yes at the end of our college career to coming here. And then we kind of started the summer in that way, going, okay, it'll be us two. We'll kind of figure this out over the summer. We actually had a gal named Anna, and she's amazing. Anna Lincoln, if she's listening today, she's such a gift. And she said yes. And Noah Gilchrist, who now also still serves with us. He oversees our sales, and then he also oversees our national team component. So Damascus has a lot of branches. But I remember when Dan officially asked me to be a missionary, when it's like, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do the full-time thing. And I remember I called him back, and the offer was like, you can't make up the offer, right? It was just like, so we're going to run summer camp, and here's how you're going to be involved in summer camp. And Brad, you're going to do the counseling side, and Ben, you're going to do the programming side. During the summer, I was going to be a head counselor, and Ben was going to do programming stuff. And he goes, we can't promise you a job past Christmas, but we're going to try some like high school men's retreats. We're going to try some confirmation retreats. I think we can get some schools partnered with us and build from there. And we did that. And then the fall came, and the Lord blessed it. You know, it's like what you see in Scripture. The fall came, and the Lord blessed it. And then the winter came, and the Lord blessed it. And then the spring came, and the Lord blessed it. And then all of a sudden, we were there through a whole year. And then it was like, well, we should probably welcome more people into it. So I remember in the wintertime, we had more people come and see. And then we went from 4 to 15 in that first jump. We had 11 more people that are like, I'm in on this. And that got momentum started that never stopped. So yeah, I think when I think about my discernment, it was a call to adventure very clearly to something I didn't know. And I go to that scripture a lot. Abraham, right? When God calls Abraham, he says for him to leave the land of his father and mother, to leave the land of his kin to a place that he will show him. He doesn't say like, hey, here's exactly where you're going. He's like, are you ready for adventure? And you have to get out of what you've known to do that. And so I think that was my call in those early years. But as we expand, it's just more adventure every day. So like early years now, there's not a lot of difference, but
it's so Brad, you don't often give yourself as much credit as I think you're due, and as much credit as the Lord is due maybe in this process. But what started in 2016 as truly a missionary, yes. And not to say we didn't put every ounce of our energy into it.
No,
we did.
Yes, for sure.
Today, you know, when you think about missionary programs in the church, in the Catholic Church, you think about some of the the big front runners, and in a real way, I think the work that we've done, the work that you've done, the work that the Lord has led us through here at Damascus we're not playing Little League anymore.
Oh yeah, we're one of the forerunners in what I would say is the missionary apostolates in America, which is just it's humbling and unbelievable.
And
really,
so from there, I want to celebrate that, and also kind of dive into as we're opening up our missionary recruiting season right now. What lessons have we learned over the course of the last 6 years? What's our kind of our orientation for heart as a young man or young woman, not too dissimilar from yourself, looks at this invitation and says, like, could that be me?
Yeah. Well, I would say I'd love your insight on this too, because I wonder what that would have looked like had I been in your shoes talking to me. Yeah. But now that I've walked with so many young adults over the last, 5-6 years, in a more intentional way than even those first or probably that like first year, um, what I notice is young adults who are faithful, who are going to mass at least once a week, maybe daily. They have a personal prayer life, but they're young adults that are really looking for purpose. That's been my number one lens is like every young adult that I talk to, they're like, there has to be a deeper purpose to this, like, yes, if I follow the 10 commandments and if I live a moral life, then that is a better life. Then I am like a good person. But they get to a point where it's like, but if that's all it is, it's not as exciting as I would want it to be to spend my whole life doing it, right? And so like as I've seen that in the young adult church, like a desire for purpose, what I've been, I don't know, discussing with the Lord in my own prayer is like, okay, Lord, what is the purpose that you've been bestowing through these apostolates? What is this purpose that you're bestowing through what I think is a renewal of mission in the church? I think the charismatic renewal has a lot to do with that of like, man, God has more. And what does that even mean, right? Because God's given us everything, but yet he also has more. It's that paradox. Like he's given everything, but it's revealed over time. And so, yeah, I think, I don't know, I'm getting so excited, I'm almost spilling coffee, but I think the purpose that young adults are looking for is what I think that we attend to most here at Damascus. Yeah. And I think that it's probably a universal. And I don't know, what do you think about that?
Well, I from before Damascus, right? In my time in youth ministry, I was in love with John Paul II and his teaching. Theology of the body is what kind of got me started into a real deeper discernment of my own faith journey. And I recall his words frequently that man can only come to know himself through a sincere gift of himself, and it's in making a gift of ourselves that we can actually step into a place of understanding who we're called to be.
That's right.
It's foundational to the sort of the message of the show. That I will never be myself until I'm authentically faithful to the mission that God's calling me to.
That's right.
Right.
Uh-huh.
And how do we see that lived out and expressed? Well, we see that through we have words for it, adventure, right?
Sure.
Adventure's coming into the expectation of like me stepping into my destiny and realizing what I'm capable of.
I define when people ask me what's adventure, I say excitement towards the unknown.
There you go.
Because all the time we say adventure and people want to like push in on that. Like, okay, that sounds like a good salesman term, right? Because this can all seem like salesmanship. And it's like, no, it's excitement towards the unknown.
Yeah.
They're like, yes. And it's all over scripture. So yeah.
Which makes your job awesome because you get to invite people into mission, into giving themselves away. And I don't know, there's a certain like sales component to that I know for me sometimes makes me feel uncomfortable. Until I remind myself that what I'm asking you to do, what I'm challenging you to do, is going to be the one thing, maybe the only thing right now in your place in life that's going to bring you to life.
That's right. And we have to define our terms too, right? Like to act like Jesus didn't sell people on something would just be incorrect. Now we can define those terms in different ways, but he sold those first disciples on adventure. Like he steps into their boat and what's he say? Come follow me and I'll make you fishers of men. And he doesn't just say that because those are good enough words for us to reflect on. He filled their nets with fish. Like if that's not a salesman tactic of like, hey, you know how full you feel right now? I need to watch my words because I speak like a Southern Ohio person. Like, do you know how full you feel right now?
I was spelling as you
feel, F-E-E-L. Do you know how full you feel right now? Like, imagine that if you were a fisher of men, right? Like, yes, like I don't want. And we had talked about this in the Shia LaBeouf interview that he had with Bishop Barron, where he's like, sometimes it can feel like salesmanship, like the faith, in the way that it's presented to us. I don't disagree with that. I think where we have to strike a balance is like, to your point, when I am selling, to the degree that I am I selling so that I meet a quota, or am I selling so this person has an opportunity to do something amazing with their lives? That's very different. Like the idea that we at Damascus don't have a quota we have to match would be incorrect, right? Like in order to serve the thousands of kids that have already signed up for camp, there is a certain number of missionaries that have to come. Sometimes that requires us really actually stating that like, hey, this is how many we need, and would you be one of them?
So I remember in 2015 when you started, 16 when you started here at Damascus and Centerburg, we needed 63 missionaries
Right.
in the summer
Yeah.
in order to accomplish the work that we
Yes.
needed to do.
Yes.
What's that number at today?
Yeah, that number today is 310. Yeah. We need 65 full time,
That's
right?
right.
So we need as many as we needed in the summer at that time. And I do think it gets into something too. It's bizarre how it falls into one of two categories. We see people in the church that have either been wounded to the degree where they are really, really hesitant to risk something, and then ones that are begging to risk something. And we have to tend to both well, right? Because the ones that are like, I have been duped before. I've been sold something and bought into it, and it wasn't what was promised. I think this is the reason the church has been so big on speaking of suffering in recent years, right? Like, because it's like, yeah, when I read the Gospels, there's all these things, but yet there's suffering. And that's where we talk about here now, not yet all the time. It's like, yes, that suffering doesn't eliminate healing, but the healing doesn't totally take all of suffering out of the world. So what's the two there? And we have to walk with that person. But then there's the person, and this is where I think I was.
Yeah.
I had just been, I don't know, devoid of a Jesus worth following. Like I liked that Jesus was right in his arguments. Like you can even just read it from a practical standpoint. I mean, Jordan Peterson does this and so many people listen. He's just arguing from a practical standpoint that Jesus represents something. I was fascinated by that. But then it really was a presentation of Jesus that was like real. They're like, oh, I could be a man like that. And I had amazing men in my life throughout my life, but I don't know how many of those men, their primary goal was to be like that man, because maybe they hadn't been provided the story. So we have to give that there. So anyway, these two sides, it's like we have to provide the context for risk to those who are hungering for it. And we have to give the context of community and wholeness to the people that are looking for it. I think Damascus brings them together.
I think that even summarizes maybe even a cultural perspective. Perhaps
Sure.
even if you haven't felt that woundedness personally.
Yeah.
Like when I think of, I don't know, the stereotypic cultural norm for somebody who's rejecting the idea of Christianity, I think it's almost as though they're, that there's like a sense that my parents or our American culture or my friends have been wounded.
Yes.
Right.
Sure.
So I almost have a secondary reaction or a secondhand reaction to a wound that I've perceived.
Yeah. Yep.
So I don't know. Maybe I know Brad loves painting in absolutes, but maybe
Usually, yeah.
maybe those are. So if those are the two mindsets that you have, like I've got someone who wants to give their life away, and I've got someone who's afraid. How do you deal with both of those individuals in communicating a message of hope?
Yeah, that's my favorite question, because I honestly think the answer is the gospel. Like a lot of times we will give these talks that are amazing and they're well laid out and all of these things. But when you go to the heart of what Jesus did, like Jesus called these fishermen that were beginning to be bored and wanted more out of life to a great life of mission.
Yeah.
Jesus went to these people who had been wounded, outcast by the religious people of the time. Like all of the different things that we experience now aren't new. They might be in a new context, but I just present the real story of Jesus. Like I love preaching from the woman at the well. Like you talk about an outcast, like an ostracized person, like a person that had been sold something that wasn't fulfilling. And then Jesus meets her, and he meets her right where she is. And he has an ability to call her on in the same way that he calls the Pharisees and Sadducees on, like Nicodemus and the rest of them. Like I'm shocked sometimes at how complicated I can make things that Jesus has laid out. And again, I don't even mean that in an overly reductive sense. I really don't. I don't mean like just say the name of Jesus to these two people and it's all over. It's like, no, but tell them who he really is.
Yeah.
And it really does help. And so I don't know, man. I think that your point is well taken. I think sometimes it can just be kind of in the culture that people that are selling something have more in the showroom window than they have in the stock room.
Yeah.
Right? Like they have way more there than they have back here.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta be careful, because the gospel is the best promise that's ever been made. And I'm not so sure it shakes up. You know, like my wife, Nina, who I've talked about at length before on this show, she just recently on her unit, she works at a hospital in downtown Columbus, and they recently lost a coworker of hers, just a tragedy, a young man, a good man. And And we've been processing that a lot. And it's crazy to me because the first thing that's asked to the Christian, to someone like Nina in that circumstance is why, right? Because we all have that. Like, why did that happen? The answer that's in that, like, so you're coming to a Christian and you're asking, okay, if you believe in a God, then tell me why. No, I'm a Christian. So when you come to me and ask why, I'm just going to tell you who. And you can go to him, right? Because that's actually, because I'm going to give you purpose. I'm not going to give you a cheap solution that's going to be overly reductive and you're going to dismiss. Because in this moment, there's not an answer that answers this. Even Jesus wept outside of the tomb of Lazarus. Like there's not an answer that's going to like remedy all hard feelings here. But I can tell you the man who I've come to believe in that's found purpose for me in the worst circumstances.
Yeah.
Like a purpose for intercession for this guy, a purpose of like, okay, what does that mean for us? Our lives aren't guaranteed every day. So anyway, long story short, I think bringing all that back to your thing is sometimes in our culture, it's I've been sold something and been let down. Yeah. And when I'm hurt like this at a funeral or something along those lines, see that thing they've been trying to sell me for so long, there's no way it could be real if this is happening. But then it's like, I don't actually have the thoughts to correct you here, but I have the person who corrected my heart here, right? And so I think if we get back to the gospel and what Jesus did, I think it serves these two pockets because they've existed forever. But
Taste and see.
Taste and see. Yeah, that's good.
I was reflecting just the other day. We were filming a video for some of our advancement partners, and thinking back to like the true challenge and crisis and difficulty that young people have when they come and when they walk through our doors. Like we experience excited kids and we experience wounded kids coming through the doors, and the solution is the same, right? The solution is Jesus.
Yes.
And when we can introduce somebody through community and through the sacraments and through a process of invitation into personal prayer into a life-giving relationship with him, like that, we don't have to remake the wheel.
Correct.
This has been the solution. It's the solution to humanity, right?
Yeah.
This is who we're made for.
Yes. And I forget which saint said it, but that Jesus wasn't only the fulfillment of all the prophets, but he's unto what every prophecy now flows back to, right? Because he is actually the answer. And this is what I get fearful of, though, is that like we don't realize that like we've lost context for someone who has our best interest in mind at all times, right? That like Jesus, he sees me when I'm on this side and I'm hurting and I'm hesitant. And he sees me on this side when I'm stir crazy and ready to go. And he in himself has lived the solution to both of those problems. And what I think can happen sometimes, and this happens in a lot of my like discipleship work when I'm walking with guys and meeting at coffee shops, it's like, are we really going to go back to sonship and fatherhood, right? Well, always. Yes, it's the most elementary thing. And yes, Aquinas wrote a lot of theological matters that went outside of that. But at the end of the day, like we're never going to get that right until heaven. Like, and we can, but our goal should be to get as close to that as we can, right? Malachi, we talked about this with Devin Shad when he was here. And if you haven't listened to that episode, Devin's amazing. And I think I misquoted. I think I said Micah, but Malachi, the last book in the Old Testament, fathers' hearts to sons, sons' hearts to fathers. Okay, so the Old Testament ends there, and then it waits 400 years to pick up where? At the genealogy of Jesus. So the Lord is always bringing us back to elementary principles. And I think in this season of the church, it's like, let's go back to the story of Jesus. Let's actually believe that story transforms. We don't have to get in like overly defensive waters. There is a place to give a reason for the hope that's within you. I'm not saying there's not a place to present an argument, but we don't have to get into overly defensive waters. Let's just speak a better story, you know? And so anyway, there's someone that has your best interest in mind at all times, and he knows how to meet you there.
That's awesome. Okay, so you've got the challenge of bringing in 310 missionaries this summer.
Yeah.
How does that happen?
The first, and we should speak this, and I think you and Dan and I do a good job of this, but we have the most amazing team in the world. Like the team that works for me in our missionary program department, like the way that they intercede for young adults of today, the way that they work more hours than most positions would ever allow for, and the way that they like actually give their whole heart to what they're doing is really special. So like having that team is so crucial because you and I can't carry that weight alone, and we weren't made to, right? And so, but when you have people that commit together, it's like, let's take on this task, right? Let's believe in our purpose, our mission, our adventure, right? Like some people's adventure is going to be coming to Damascus. My adventure is getting 310 people here. Like I have no idea how that's going to happen, but at least like the practical steps that we've seen is like, first of all, having that team, getting that team together, and then you mentioned it earlier. Our way of bringing people into a way of life is taste and see. So we believe in incarnational recruiting, right? Like, I don't even know if I like the word recruiting. It's funny because we're still not sure where this will land forever. But right now, our recruiting department is our future missionary department because because every person that they encounter, I want them to have the heart of recognizing that that person's a future missionary, whether with us or not, right? Yeah. Because I don't want to bring someone out of their call. I want to bring them into their call. And so when we see that every person has a mission, we can go and we can meet them there, introduce them to this story, and tell them to respond to the story, right? Hear the story of Jesus. The saints of history have responded in, I don't know, thousands, hundreds of thousands of ways, and you're called to respond to it. And one way you can respond is by coming to Damascus and being a part of what God's doing. And it's giving the younger generation what you never had, right? And that's a huge sell for so many that are in this risk, like adventure pocket, right? And then the other places over here, it's like, oh man, I have so much to parse out here. It's like, yeah, come serve. Like, there's no better thing. Like, we don't want to minister from woundedness, but I want to heal while serving, right? Like, I want to heal while serving. Like, I want to give of my life so I can learn about my life, right? You mentioned like Gaudium et Spes, the like sincere gift of self. So I would say that really our strategy is having a great team, bringing in an incarnational reality of Jesus to the campuses where we're recruiting and the conferences where we're recruiting, meeting people face to face, asking them what their dream for their life is, trying to partner them with that dream, even if it's outside of Damascus, so we can stay authentic to our call. And then from that place, intentional follow-up that asks good questions and brings them into a process.
Good.
Yeah.
So I think that process is what's on my mind. You know, we talked about, and I remember walking through this with you. I mean, it's not like you did this on your own.
No.
The process of discernment when you were responding to the call here at Damascus, that was a personal invested time. How do you engage in a way that like is personally invested and speaks to the heart for hundreds of people? Like what's discernment look like when we're discerning it on a scale like that?
I think that's actually the question. Like, I think that's the question of the young adult church. When I'm brought onto committees and things that are asking about missionary life, I want to hear your thoughts on that too. But I'll kick the can around for a second here. I think when I look at young adults today, we mentioned this already, but I think most of them have forgotten that there's someone that's in their life that has their best interest in mind at every moment and has solution, not problems, right? And when we lose that context, we forget that we have a lifeline. We forget we have a place to ask, you know? And so we get caught up with thousands of options, and we feel such an anxiety and a pressure to choose the right one. Well, the odds that you choose the right one out of 1,000 is 0. Like, you're just not going to. You're not going to choose it, right? It's like finding a needle in a haystack. And of course that's anxiety provoking, especially when there's a timeline on it, right? Imagine trying to find a needle in a haystack and someone telling you, hey, I'm going to start the clock now. It's like, I'm going to waste 1 minute just in total sweat before I even start. But if we remember that we have someone that has our best interest in mind, who wants to give us solutions, not problems, when we're reintroduced to that relationship, again, it's all strategic. So when we run an event at a college campus, we want to have Eucharistic adoration. We want to bring people to the face of the one who's intimately involved in their lives. And at the very end, the sale isn't, and if you love him, you have to love us, come serve at Damascus, right? The sale at the end is, this man, as close as he was to you tonight in the monstrance, is even closer day to day.
Yeah.
And he wants to give you the answers to your life's questions. And he doesn't want to give you a cheap answer. You speak this so well when it comes to like the Easter egg hunt, right? Like, he doesn't want to give you cheap answers. He wants to give you answers that he unveils in a variety of ways. But when we start that relationship, teaching people to go to the Lord, and then this is where I'd love to get your thoughts is, I think discernment fundamentally breaks down to 3 questions. And you're actually the first person who taught me these questions. Where they come from originally, we can talk about that. But the three questions, and we teach this whenever it comes to mission, right? So if I'm at a gas station and I'm going up to the gas station attendant and I'm buying I don't know, whatever, a coffee or something, as I'm approaching that man, can enter into a process with the Lord where I ask, Lord, what is your heart for this situation, for this man, for this place? What do you want me to do about it? So that's the second question. And when do you want me to do it? That's the third. So what is your heart, Lord? What do you want me to do about it? When do you want me to do it? In that analogy with the gas station attendant, it's probably all of 15 seconds, right? And you're just intently wondering what God might speak. I think you can do that same thing over the course of a few months if you're trying to decide what to do with your summer. Like, Lord, what is your heart for my summer? Start there. Like, what do you want from me this summer? Right? And you're probably going to originally start with the classic answers, right? Like, you want me to grow closer to you this summer. You want me to give of my life this summer. And that's not going to have a lot of like concreteness to it. But don't give up there. Of course not. Like, it's purposely not going to have a lot of concreteness to it, because the next step is where concreteness comes in. So then you ask, what do you want me to do about it? Well, there's where steps start happening. And then the question that I think all of us forget to ask is when, right? Like there is a real reality that we've had missionaries here who one summer are like, I want to serve there so badly, but I just don't think it's yet, because I think I'm supposed to look at what this has for me. And then they go into an internship or something. They recognize something that they want to fix in the world. They come and become a missionary here and then deploy back into that sphere of influence. So like when matters, right? But again, I think
You're such a good witness to that too, Brad.
Well, yeah. What do you think about that though? Those questions, I think we teach them a lot in the micro, and and that's completely necessary. I think you can take them.
That's great.
Up.
Yeah. So that concept comes from our prophetic teaching. And I think my first place in grabbing that was in Vacaville, California. So there's three components to understanding prophecy, right? That God gives the content, the revelation, and then God offers an interpretation, and then we seek the means by which God desires for us to apply that application. So revelation, interpretation, application, and the way that we enter into that process, I think the key is understanding that this is supposed to be about relationship, right? So it's so easy in the context of discernment or in prophetic prayer to think that the end goal is a piece of information. So the end goal about this missionary discernment process is understanding what my commitment level is come June.
Yes, right.
And the good news is that it's not about that, right? I can get the detail wrong. I could screw up the process of
So
being influenced by my own desires or being influenced by whatever the struggles that I may face in from family or financial pressure or whatever the case may be. And if I say yes to a process that brings me into conversation with the Lord, like that's what makes the difference in maturity and prayer and expression.
Much wisdom to that. I think about that in the human context. So Nina and I bought a house when it was in April. So when we were recording this, it was like 6 months ago or something like that. And it's funny because I've never thought about it like that. But now that I am thinking about it while I'm talking to you right now, it's like, man, it wasn't about the house. Like the way that Nina and I had to have conversations we never would have had outside of that. The risks that we had to take together. Well, even I'm now thinking just the conversations you and I have had over the last number of months on you and your family and figuring out your housing situation. Like, what if that was about relationship? Like relationship between Aaron and Monica, relationship between Aaron and Monica and their kids, relationship between Aaron and Monica and Damascus, right? Like we can take that into the concreteness of our everyday. But this is the thing is all of that requires us to recognize that there is someone with our best interest in mind who has answers we don't always have. And that's like, there's a yieldedness to that. And again, because he's the ultimate relationship that infuses all of those others, right? Like he transcends the other relationships, not because he doesn't want to breathe into them, but because he has the solutions to make those happen. And so like, I think that I experience this a lot with young adult men who are discerning vocation. And I've talked about vocation a lot on this podcast, and it's because I have such a passion, because I think we bear a weight sometimes in the church as young adults who have given our lives to the Lord that I don't think we're supposed to bear. And it's something like this. This is the analogy I always give. We treat God as if he's written a book about our lives and hidden it in a library that we have to frantically find before we die. Okay? So like it's a huge library and he's written a book and it's about your life or my life and he's hidden it and go. And don't die before you find it or purposelessness is yours, you know? And it's like, no, because that's not God. Because the Father's actually authoring my book right next to me. And man, and the relationship you can have when you realize that, like, even when I choose against his will, he still writes it into the book, you know? And then it's like, okay, well, we're going to have to figure this one out together, Lord. Like, how do I get out of this? But it weaves the most beautiful story and he's not going to impose it on me. And here's another thing, like in our times of discernment, we're like, yeah, well, if he promises certainty, well, in that analogy, if he's authoring the book beside me, if I flip way ahead, they're just blank pages. And of course I'm going to get frustrated, but it's because he's like, no, let's get back to this page. Like, what are you doing right now? I think we get so obsessed with that end result that you're talking about that we forget about the relationship that's developing in the meantime. I mean, let's just presume that someone chooses marriage and they should have chosen priesthood. Is the father just like gone forever? You know, like, or vice versa, or vice versa. And it's like, no, yet at the same time, right? Like, and I know that people listening are like, yeah, but of course of course we want to hear from him, but we don't want to hear from him because we're afraid of getting it wrong. We want to hear from him because he promises us to have the most fulfilling life for us. That's a very different approach. Like when I talk to you, Aaron, like about different things we're doing here at Damascus, it's a very different approach when I come to you out of fear of messing up in my position versus if I come to you like, hey, you have wisdom here I don't have. What if we partnered together? How cool could that be? It's just a different process. It's the same, I guess, end result maybe, but it's a different process. So you're right. I think we get obsessed with the end and we don't look at them. Because the end isn't really the end. So this is where I get at with vocation too. Like the end is the Lord.
Yeah.
So all of this is means. It's just the way that I have relationship with the Lord. He's the source and the summit, right? So the Lord is he who gives me the information on if I should become a priest or a married person. So he's the source. He's the he's the voice, the vox. He's vocation, the call. He's speaking here. Here I am. I respond so that I can get back to that voice, right? And that makes life awesome because it comes from him and back to him. You know?
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So in order to effectively or more effectively enter into that process, like I need to be in a constant state of response. I need to be in a constant state of seeking the Lord's voice and responding courageously.
Yep.
Which is why I think we've joked about this before, right? The single best place to discern a call to the priesthood is in the seminary.
Yes.
I think, like to make a courageous act of faith where I'm going to say I'm going to put my heart on the line to be able to do this thing, right? Is there any person for whom a response like a summer at Damascus is inappropriate? I'd say no.
No, right.
I mean, like where else? For whom is a season where I can learn about self-sacrifice, where I can learn about modeling the life and the spirit to young people, where I can learn about what it means to give a missionary yes.
Sure.
For whom is that not helpful? Inappropriate. Right.
Well, ask any Catholic husband. Ask any Catholic husband if you would have gone to a come and see at a seminary or stayed there for a week or even entered for a year.
Yeah.
Would your marriage be worse off for it? No. None of them would say yes, right? Because it's a matter of information gathering. And I do think in this season of the church, if we're going to get to very specific, we do need to discern mission. Because we can continue to bicker on like, yeah, the world's going that way. We should build up over here and kind of walk alongside the world, or we need to conquer the whole. Like we can get into all of that. And there are lines there, and I'm not even sure where all of it falls. But one thing I can definitely say is that the church in this season of her existence is going to need holiness and mission to mesh in the most, outward way that it has since the early church.
Yeah.
And so a summer with Damascus, in my opinion, it does three things. So the idols that we tend to make in our lives, we make an idol of the wisdom that's been given to us before. And this can be a real tension for us as young adults because it's like, my mom and dad have loved me so well and given me great, great wisdom. But there comes a time where I have to leave the land of my father and mother, right? So, and that's Abraham. That's Abraham, right? Like, and Abraham did it when he was 100, and some of us do it, I don't know if he was 100, he was old. So there's a part of that that's like, we can appreciate the wisdom that's been given, but now let's go gain some wisdom of our own, which only comes through experience. And sometimes we'll drop the ball there. And what's beautiful about that is I can call mom and dad back and be like, hey, I need some help. I know I made this choice. And I know that when I first told you that I might make it, we both didn't understand it. And here's where I'm at, right? So I see that rub with parents sometimes with young adults. And I understand it because there's good wisdom there. But we can't make an idol out of the wisdom of the past, or we'll never gain the wisdom of the present for the future generations that we have to pass it to. Second is it tears down the idol of relationship in the context of how the world defines it, which means I have to be with you all of the time, and we have to act like we agree on everything. When you come to Damascus, that's just not going to happen. You're going to be with people who are different than you. I mean, you and I talk about this all the time, just even at our leadership meeting, just how many different temperaments and mindsets we have, how beautiful that is. But that'll heal you fast, but you have to be willing to enter the process. So sometimes we can make an idol of relationship. I see this especially with dating relationships, because it's something like, well, I found the one. There was 1,000 options, and I found the one. I can't miss it. It's like, yeah, but if we hang on loosely to that, it's gonna serve us so much better in marriage. It's gonna serve us so much better in life. And then the third is finance, right? So the idols that we make, right? The wisdom of the past, and that keeps us frozen. We can make an idol out of relationship, and that leaves us frozen. And we can make an idol out of finance, which leaves us frozen. We have to be in one track, right? And what I would say is why I think Damascus very easily could be a call for every young adult isn't just because I'm overseeing the missionary program. It's because those three fundamental things we have literally intentionally built our program around addressing.
Yeah.
And if anyone addresses that for 3 months, they're going to be better served, honestly. And I still wrestle with it. You and I have been having conversations about how do we do mission support raising long-term for our organization. I've been talking to our diocese here in Columbus. How do we get mission support raising? And we could have an entire episode on that. But ultimately, it's bringing people onto mission with you through their financial resource.
Yeah.
We've had conversations about dating and all of these things, not because we want to be, I don't know, perfect in those areas, but we want to address those three things where the world can freeze us. We want to free people. So yeah, that's what I would give as like a, I don't know, just a general context of like young adults today seeking purpose, and the discernment piece that I think is huge. So,
and the good thing is, we can't promise riches here at Damascus necessarily. We can lead toward good reconciliation in your family, right? And we can just about get to the point where we can promise that you're going to leave with a spouse.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, that's another thing too, is like, I think that's almost like a context for a promise, right? Is don't be so sure that what you have now is all that you ever could have. And again, I know that's like
totally joking.
Abstract. No, but I do think that there's a piece to that though, because sometimes it's like, well, I even think about this with Nina, my walk with Nina. So well, maybe you have some wisdom in that with Monica too, but when I first met Nina, I had never been so intrigued by someone in my whole life.
Yeah.
And I know that you had this experience too, because I know what you said shortly after meeting Monica, which was my same experience with Nina. I was just like, that girl just intrigues me so much. Like I would get life from a life with her, And I was in the middle of just a season where I was seeking the Lord explicitly. I wasn't going to enter seminary, and I wasn't going to enter a relationship because I had just met him, and I didn't even know what it meant to listen or to like do life at all. And in the Lord, right? Like do life in the Lord. So there was a period of like hard waiting where I'm like, I really like her. I don't know. Like, am I even doing what's right? Like confusion kind of. And then we stepped in, and I remember not having certainty. And at that time, I thought discernment was certainty. But watch how God uses it, right? Like, so Nina and I, after a few months, stepped out for the first time because I didn't have certainty, because I thought that you had to have certainty for all the things. And the Lord used it so well, because then I actually went to a seminary for the first time and stayed for a week. And I was like, whoa, this is a beautiful way of life. I went to a few religious orders. I'm like, oh my goodness, like this is a sweet way of life. And I started noticing in my heart this desire for celibacy. And then what's so funny is the Lord took me through all of it. And Nina had dated others in the meantime and things, and took both of us on this path where at a moment I went back and I was like, hey, I want to try to do this differently this time. And I'm not certain, but I'd like to welcome you into my life in a vulnerable way that I didn't at first. And my goodness, it was better. It was better. And so I'm bringing that up because sometimes, yeah, people come here and they'll have a relationship that like, what was good. It was. And then they offered it as a sacrifice, and they either step back into that later better, or sometimes they'll find others, or at other times the Lord will work through their, I don't know, their distance to actually heal things in both of their hearts and bring them together. So it's like, nothing's wasted on the Lord, right? And maybe we can focus on that for a second. I wonder what you would say about that. Like nothing's wasted on him. Like I've never ever made a sacrifice where the Lord hasn't outdone me. Now, again, I'm even in a season right now of certain things within my own family context that I don't see the fruit yet. And I'm wrestling with it. I'm like, I've made a sacrifice here, at least to my own estimation, Lord. And I don't think that it's better right now. But again, because of all the past, it's like in 5 years, I think I'm going to think differently. Now, right now, I am going to him and being honest. And I wonder, yeah, right? Like sacrifice, that's what we were made to do.
It's funny in the context of like discernment in dating. I remember one of the image that keeps coming back to me is that like I could spend my whole life looking for an individual who's going to be my fulfillment, or I could orient myself in such a way that I'm locked in on the Lord, and I'm pursuing Him in this race, and then I look to my left and my right and I see who's running with me, right? And that those are the individuals, or that's the individual that I'm called to spend the rest of my life with. And we've had so many beautiful stories of someone, a missionary coming into Damascus with a broken relationship with his or her parents, right? And it's not that the missionary formation program here talks about, hey, here's the good conflict resolution methods. No, it's about the fact that over the course of a summer or a year or 2 or 5, that this son or daughter came into a relationship with the Heavenly Father that ultimately brought them to a place of healing, right? And it's from that healed place that I can actually bring that grace into the relationships that exist in my life.
Yes, and he shared his heart with them, or what his heart was. He shared with them what they should do about it.
Yes.
And he shared with them when they should do it. Like that's the thing, is we try to find this methodology that I'm confident is just found in him. Like when we get caught, again, I'm not, please, anyone listening, like, and you can make comments if you have other thoughts, but like, I'm not trying to say method has no place. I'm saying it has a subsidiary place to relationship with the Lord, right? And to the degree I can trust someone that they're listening to him, I can judge the later things by its fruits and then help them if the fruits are going sideways. We can prune and we can do other things, right?
Yeah.
Like, I think sometimes we fear making a decision up front that might have sidewaysness to it.
Yeah.
But every decision has sidewaysness to it. Like if you've been married for 15 minutes, well, no, maybe not. But if you've been married for 2 weeks, maybe 3 months, like you recognize that there's like, that I'm different than this person.
Yeah.
That I'm different, and I'm more selfish than I thought I was. And like, there's going to be a myriad of things that like present themselves to you. But I can tell you this, what God put together, no man, including the two in the relationship, can put asunder. Like he wants to transcend that and be the answer. And like, man, I do go back to what I was saying at the beginning. We have forgotten that there's someone who has our best interest in mind all of the time, even when we don't understand it. Bishop Barron gives the analogy, and I love Bishop Barron. And I know that he is just out on the front lines. And like, again, there's so many people that analyze maybe what might be perceived as missteps that he takes, but man, he's out there, like he's on the battle line, and I can always appreciate that. And he was talking about taking his dog to the vet and talking about this in the context of understanding God's ways. And he loved this dog, and the dog needed to get its shots. And as the dog is laying on the table, Bishop Barron was like, this is like, I think in his teenage years, he's like holding the dog down, and the dog's like looking at him like, why are you doing this to me? Like, and Bishop Barron uses it as an analogy to say, I couldn't in that moment even try for a second to explain how this was for that dog's good, right? And because my thoughts are so other than that, right? And like in that same way, like it can feel like anyone listening today, if you're waiting on the vocation that you feel called to, if you're waiting on the mission that you feel like is going to embrace the gifts you have, it can feel like, Lord, I have no idea how this is for my good. I have no idea how this is for my good. Or if you're going through marital trouble, and by marital trouble, I mean arguments that are hard to resolve. Like, I mean, like preferences that are competing. I mean, like all of these things that we find. But again, if we can submit those to the Lord, that's where resolution's had, right? That's what Jesus does. He brings the Lord to us. I mean, if we simplify the gospel as much as humanly possible, he brings God to us. That'd be good for all the all the seasons of our life.
So you will never come to know yourself other than a sincere gift of yourself, and that's the message of Encounter and Mission. The reason that you and I believe so strongly in a summer or a season or 2 years on mission with Damascus is because this is a place where you can come and you can be assured that through mission that you're going to have a community that pushes you into relationship, right? And that you're gonna find the Lord in a new way.
Yes. Well, we preach the Galatians 2:20. And speak to this because I don't know where that began either. It started when I first got here, and maybe it was just you and Dan in prayer. But like, I have been crucified with Christ, and it's no longer I who live, but Christ who lives in me. And early in my conversion, I don't even remember where I read it or if it was presented in a talk, but there was like this take-home point that was, it might have been a poem. I don't remember, but it was and I bid you come die. And I don't know why it stuck with me. It wasn't like, and because of how beautiful the words before, it wasn't like some daunting, like dark thing. It was like, and I bid you come die. It was like the most loving invitation you could ever have. And I remember it just stuck with me. And all of a sudden now in this season of the church, I'm being brought into all these committees that are like, men aren't committing, right? Men aren't on any of our parish committees. They're not investing anywhere. They're not coming in as missionaries at the different apostolates. Like, they're not coming. And women, there's just something about their receptivity that we really need to learn from, because I don't get asked that question as often, but I do with the men. And I'm like, but maybe it's because we haven't bid them come die. Maybe it's because we've taken the bar and we've brought it so low to try to maximize attendance that in bringing it so low, the value's not seen in it anymore, because we can do that. And I can do that in my life. I can lower the bar artificially so I feel like I'm adequate. Or I can leave the bar high, recognizing my inadequacies and filling the gap with the Lord's mercy. That's better. And that's what we should do, right? And I don't know. I wonder what you've seen in that, because I think there was a part of me that felt that, whether you and Dan intended it, that Galatians 2:20 reality, you guys did not, you didn't hide from me that I was going to come and it was going to be a struggle. Like, you didn't hide that, like, hey, like there's going to be long nights, like, and hard days. And like, that was never hidden.
Yeah. That just energizes me so much.
Me too.
Yeah. I mean, I look back at my own experience in faith and my own coming to know the Lord. And it was in the times where it required immense hard work. Right. Maybe that's why I love missionary work here at Damascus. The one thing I can guarantee is when you come for a summer, you will leave exhausted, right? You will not go home well rested. When you come and serve 2 years here, you'll need a time to decompress after you finish your time on mission.
Sure.
Why? Because we're inviting you into the reality of what Christian life is, right? When I said yes to family, I said yes to sleepless nights, right?
Yes. No, exactly.
I can't remember the last time that I woke up well rested.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the yes to the Lord is a full yes, and it's like you said before, it's the yes of Abraham. It's a yes that says, God, I'm giving you everything, and I'm trusting you to reveal to me over time what that means, right? And the moment that we get comfortable is the moment we start relying on ourselves again.
It's right. Yeah.
So in a lot of ways, I think we have built our model here at Damascus intentionally in such a way that it pushes that boundary deliberately
For life.
Right?
Because we're trying to form lifelong missionaries.
And not the reason that I'm certain that we're succeeding in that is because not a single day goes by where somebody doesn't question, are we pushing too hard?
Yeah, no, exactly. Yeah.
The minute we stop asking that question, either means we've now achieved sainthood
Yeah, right.
or that we've stopped pushing hard
Yes,
enough.
well, yes, exactly. Well, it's all of my life for the rest of my life. You know, Nina and I, we've been discerning. We have this like empty space on the wall, and we're
Yeah.
like, what sign do we want to put there? You know, it's just one of those things. And um, w- like the one that we've settled, not settled on, but like looked into and decided is with my whole heart for my whole life,
Yeah.
right? And why? Because like with my whole heart for my whole life, when I wake up, like this whole day with my whole heart for as long as the Lord will let me stay up, like. And for whatever reason, we've
Should toss that back to the creative department too.
yeah to like create for us. But I think that what I'm trying to get at with that is the wisdom that you're giving, and I would ask you on that too. Like when I make a decision for the Lord, the things that will accompany that decision are sacrifice and fulfillment, like always, and because sacrifice is what leads to fulfillment. And we know this from Genesis. I preach on this literally all of the time because I think that the Lord just tells the same story over and over and over again.
Yep.
He's trying to bring love and sacrifice back together. He's trying to bring fulfillment, which only happens through love, but it can't happen without sacrifice. In Genesis, he's like, you can have anything. You just can't have that one tree. And if you're anything like me and you're a critical thinker, you're like, why put a tree there? Right? Like just let it, just, you knew we were going to screw it up, right? Like, well, of course he's going to put a tree there because love isn't possible without sacrifice. Yeah. Right. And so what does he do for the rest of the scriptures and the rest of salvation history, including and up to today? He's trying to bring love and sacrifice back together. Yeah. And I learned to love him and myself and those around me and the church differently when I sacrifice. And so I think like maybe a parting piece of wisdom is like when you're discerning, like the wisdom of that poem, like where's the Lord bidding you to come die? And isn't it funny, like in our lives with Holy Spirit, like that conscience, that voice that we all know, when you sit on your bed at night and it's just you and you really, really think to yourself, are the relationships that I'm in the right relationships? Is the wisdom that I'm listening to the wisdom that I think is coming from the Lord and what's begging me to adventure sometimes? Right? Because it's not even to say that it's not wisdom that could come from the Lord. It's asking, is it wisdom that is coming from? That's a different thing. Anyway, and like, is this pursuit of my life for finance and power and prestige? You can't lie to yourself. Like you will know. Like if you sit there, like I do think it's a form of prayer. It's the examine prayer of Ignatius rather. It's like, Lord, and that's the solution to dating. That's the solution to missional call. That's the solution to it's like learning how to be naked before the Lord. Back to Genesis, right? Lord, I want to sacrifice my life for you because you sacrifice yours for me.
Cool. Well, Brad, in wrapping up today, so we've got some people who are watching the show today who are maybe on the fence, considering whether this is a yes that I can give with my summer or with my next couple years. Maybe we've got individuals who are watching the show today who are asking, is this something that would be appropriate for my son, my daughter, my grandson, my granddaughter, my best friend, my boyfriend?
Yeah, right.
What do you say?
Yeah, I would, well, let me start with this. So like the question isn't whether or not you're called to say yes this summer to the Lord. The question is where you're called to say yes to the Lord this summer, right? So when we remember that, then the first person we go to is the Lord. And wherever he leads is where you should go. Not even where you could, where you should. Because the one thing that we agree on when we become Christian is that we'll never do anything that he says to do otherwise.
Yep.
Right? And so it's not whether or not you're called to give a yes, it's where. And if Damascus is intriguing you, if you're listening today or even watching on YouTube and you're thinking to yourself, like, this might be for me, it might be for someone that I love, Damascus.net/mission. It tells our story. It shares with you what we're doing. And then from there, what I would encourage you to do is if you live in an area that Damascus is coming to and you're a young adult, come to that event because taste and see what the Lord's doing here and see if you're called to be a part of that. If you can't come to one of those events, we have the Empower Conference for young adults, and send the young adult in your life to that conference. It's changed countless lives. For people that don't even serve here, those are my favorite emails I get is like, hey, 3 years ago, I came to the Empower Conference and now I'm working this other job. I'm like, I never even knew, right? But again, if you have a young adult in your life or if you're a young adult, come and see. That's the entire gospel is come and see and follow me. Come and see and then follow him where he calls you to say yes. But Damascus.net/mission. You can email us at mission@damascus.net if you have questions and thoughts. But yeah, give your life to the Lord. And I'm grateful for you, Aaron. And it's fun to have this interview with you today because thanks for inviting me to the same thing. It's amazing. Like let's just keep giving that to all because encounter has to lead to mission. That's what the whole show's about.
Amen. Thanks for joining us today, friends. You have been listening to Beyond Damascus, the show where encounter meets mission. This has been sort of a kind of an interview, kind of a conversation between Brad and Aaron on the missionary program and the discernment associated with it. If you have questions or feedback, comment, feel free to subscribe for more content like this, and share this with somebody who you think might find it meaningful. Thanks again to our sponsors for today's show, and we'll catch you again next week. God bless.